see it ending like this, but I guess they did open it up for a little bit of room with the coroner's explanation of what happened, because they didn't rule out other causes. They didn't really prove it was a fall.
Hello, Lightkeepers. Joshua Kangley here. And before I release the last episode on Chance Englebert's season, I wanted to include another episode for you in light of the recent news, updates, and official releases from officials. The news that dropped recently, the confirmation of the remains found at the Scottsbluff Monument in October belonging to Chance, and the cause of death being accidental, has created some ripples of emotions across social media. And that's normal in cases like this. After all, it's been over 6 years since Chance went missing. And people who have been following this case really care about Chance. And hearing this news has left many with more questions. And one of these people is Marcy. Marcy has been someone who I've been in contact with about this case. She's a fellow advocate. She's a lightkeeper, and she cares deeply about the truth and finding answers. She has a lot of compassion for Dawn and her family. She expressed to me recently what I noticed many on social media are also feeling. And I wanted to explore this a little bit and talk about this to give some voice to what many people are thinking right now and feeling right now. So I asked Marcy if she wanted to come in on the podcast and talk with me, and she said yes. And this is the first time that Marcy has spoken out like this, and that can be a very hard thing to do. So, listeners, like I always ask, please listen with an open heart and understand that this is someone expressing her feelings, actually feelings that many have. And I wanted to give her a chance to do that, to express her feelings and thoughts about this in a safe space that I know many of you are also feeling. Marcy is a mother. She's someone who cares about the truth. Marcy is also someone who has stayed on this case since the beginning. She's been in connection with Dawn and has worked alongside the private detective whom you've heard from early on in this podcast. So she has some real insight that I believe is beneficial to this story. And here is Marcy now.
My involvement with Chance's case started simply as a mom and a wife who felt something like wasn't right from the first article I read in the very beginning. I always had a heart for advocacy, whether that's supporting missing persons, volunteering with the Call to Freedom, Emily's Hope, Special Olympics, Jake's Summer Classic, and coaching sixth grade boys basketball with the Palace City program in South Dakota. And when I found out that he was a South Dakota boy, it just sparked my interest to read more about it. And I started following the case closely after, that, and talking with people who were involved and eventually connecting with Ryan. I really respect the effort Ryan has put in. He's been consistent, steady, and really focused on seeking the truth and facts. And then over time, I've helped share information and spread awareness and support searches and, just keep the community engaged as much as I could on social media. I also traveled to Gering and met up with Ryan to discuss and to go over the case in person. And to like go over the very last locations Chance was known to be at. To me, it's always been about supporting the family and standing up for those who, don't have a voice. The case has meant a lot to a lot of people, like you said, and I just wanted to do my part. As far as going to Gering with Ryan, I went there and we retraced Chance's steps the night he disappeared. And after reviewing the ring camera footage and walking the possible path, it looks like, he didn't continue west on Stable Club Road, but likely turned down Terry Boulevard toward the Carpenter Center. So from there, he would have reached the railroad tracks. Well, there's a gated fence that goes down this gravel back road. And from there, if you follow that all the way there, it's locked. But if you follow that, that would lead you kind of by where like the railroad tracks, and leaving only a few possible routes to move forward. So I mean, right from there you could have went across the street to Owl Road. You could have taken a right, or taken a left, which that's like where the two girls were seen running, was down by the bridge there. So they were kind of seen running up from there, and then through the ditch. And there was witnesses also that seen him, or the two girls, running back down. As far as like I know, I believe he had the argument with an older man, either inside or outside. The last I know, and that the witnesses have came out and told me, is that it was outside. It could have been outside and inside, but he said outside, and he's seen the person driving the truck go towards the Walmart area, and he had seen Chance walk back the other way. So that would be, by going back towards Owl Road area. And when we had kind of timed that all out, it would have put him, exactly around the time, around 8:20, 8:30, which would have been around the exact time where the girls were seen running. And my theory and my guess is that as he was crossing the road, and when the rain was pouring down so hard, that I think they were over driving the speed limit and accidentally hit him, not seeing him. And he went off into the ditch, and that's where the girls were seen, running from the ditch and back to the ditch. Or see, vice versa. But also, we have not seen the WTT footage, which that would be huge if we could see exactly what happened down Owl Road, because witnesses have came out and said that they have seen the truck, or it looked like to be a higher vehicle and a lower vehicle, which Ryan had determined it was probably the boat lights in the back, and another vehicle, another car looking, or lower lights parked there as well. So that would be two vehicles that would have been on Owl Road. Now we don't have the footage of that, so until hopefully we can see that at some point, that would be helpful for the case. But
Mhm.
as far as that is, that's what I think. And I do think, then I think he could have been picked up there. And I don't want to jump to conclusions or blaming anyone, but I just by the evidence and stuff that we do have, that's likely what I think happened. Bailey had said in an interview that she couldn't see in front of her car. And so that leads me to think that if she couldn't see, then anybody else that were driving during those hours couldn't see. Because in fact, there was a couple cars and couple witnesses that were parked. They had to pull over because it was raining so hard.
When I first heard about this case and really getting into it, learning that Chance was walking to his home from Gehring, Nebraska, which is a considerable distance, there was a point where I was feeling like this wasn't making sense. And by that, I mean the fact that, number one, it's a very long distance. I mean, this isn't a short walk across town. This is a long, long distance. And number two, more importantly, because I do think that under the right set of circumstances, he could have walked it. And I believe that he probably wanted to walk it. However, there was a storm. When this was all going down, when this was happening, there was a storm. And this wasn't just a storm, this was a substantial storm, a storm that has been reported as one of the worst storms the area has seen in quite a long time. So it was bad. It was a bad storm. And if you remember, when I spoke on this podcast earlier with the private detective, he said that a clerk at a convenience store, Big Bats, witnessed him there. And based on the interaction and conversation they had, the private detective thought, and so do I, it was possible that Chance was walking back. So had he walked back according to the time frame, it would have put him near where the girls were seen and heard screaming coming out of that ditch, if you remember from the previous podcast. So I asked Marcy if this is what she believes, based on what she knows and her insights in this case.
Yes, I do
Okay.
think I think with seeing how the rain was coming in around that time, it had been sprinkling, and looking over the weather around that area, and when I looked at that, it was sprinkling, it was starting to roll in. Yeah, I definitely think that he thought, yeah, maybe I'm gonna go head back that way.
Yeah.
So if he would have walked just to clear his mind again, and didn't want to go with whoever he was arguing with, I think that he was just still blowing off steam and wanted to go back home to grandparents' house, and he was just taking a longer way. I think if he would have went around that corner, um, past the bridge, he would have ended back up. You can kind of turn around that corner, and he would end up on the street where the grandparents live. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think, I mean, I just feel like he was going back home, and whether he was gonna take that road, right across from Owl Road, was it Stable Club, if he was gonna take that road again, he very well could have been crossing the street,
Mm-hmm.
going across there, and maybe not seeing the car either. Especially if his eyes are closed, he was trying to, hide his phone from it being soaked. Just, and with the wind and everything that was happening that night, very well, they just didn't see him. And like I said, it could be an accident. Obviously, I think it's an accident, but it wasn't on top of the monument. Yeah, I think he was heading back to grandparents' house.
Now, you heard Marcy mention a possible argument with an older gentleman. To clarify this a little bit more, I asked her about it.
So at first, the witness said that he had seen, or they were arguing in the back of the store, and then I suppose of over 6.5 years, your memory's kind of foggy, and you're not thinking of it every day like Ryan and I are. He couldn't remember if it was inside or outside but when he knows that the older man jumped in the truck, and he's seen him drive off, and then he's seen Chance walking towards the bridge. There was also other people starting to park, yeah, at the gas station because of the weather.
So there was a potential argument with an older man. To what extent and what about, we don't know that. But the witness does say that the older man drives off one way and Chance heads down the other way, walking towards the bridge, and presumably at this time heading back to Bailey's grandparents' house. And again, I don't want to throw around speculation. And so I want to be careful about that. But trying to make sense of all of this, as we all are, to me, that makes sense to me. That I can understand. At this point, he's decided, you know what? I've walked it off. I've cooled down. And now there is a storm rolling in and it's getting dark. And Chance is a smart guy. I mean, he's a smart guy, someone who has his wits about him and a good head on his shoulders. So I think he decides to go back to Bailey's grandparents. Now, how he ends up at the Scottsbluff Monument, that's now the new question, and a question many people are asking. Why there and how? And so now this monument becomes another point of confusion for me. So, to get a better idea going further now, I asked Marcy where the monument is in relation to where Chance would have been walking at that time. Marcy has been out there. She's actually retraced Chance's steps. So, I wanted to get her firsthand perspective.
Where the monument is, when we were on Owl Road, when we went there, I literally took a picture of where I was standing, and it was just on that main road of Owl Road while we were there, just kind of investigating the area. And it was just weird. I looked over, seeing the Scottsbluff Monument, and thinking, gosh, that's so close. I mean, I bet it's probably a mile and a half away from where we were standing.
When Marcy was out there retracing Chance's steps, investigating, searching, she actually took a photo of the monument. And this hits hard with her now, knowing that she was so close to Chance. And the other thing is, she had actually planned to go back out there and search that area, along with the private detective and some others. They actually planned to search that area before he was found. So, as you can imagine, putting yourself in her shoes, this really stings for her.
Having that photo and stuff still, like when I look back and only being, I guess, a mile or a mile and a half away from him, it was just, it's just heartbreaking situation.
Mhm.
Actually, in fact, when we first heard of the news that they found the remains, or found some remains, they didn't know if it was Chance's or not. I just, yeah, just didn't. It didn't sit well, and only thinking that we were a mile, that close, and didn't find him. Just was heartbreaking. But also, we had just planned the night before we found that out, that Ryan had set up a team of dogs and some searchers to come up, and we were going to go back out in October, late October, early November, to take the dogs back out there and redo that search going out that way towards the Scottsbluff area. So I guess with your question being asked, if you kept going down that road, there's a road that leads down there, and there's a gravel road that kind of takes you back to the north side. Now it's one of those roads that is not hiked or walked. And at that time, the government had shut down the monument. So when the two hikers were going across there and found him, they were just kind of going back, I guess, through that area. And I don't know if a dog. I'm not for sure 100% if a dog actually found, but that's what I'm thinking. And they had a dog with them, and that's how they found him. But just thinking that we were so close, and we were going back out there the next, within the next couple weeks, was, heartbreaking.
So the monument was close, about a mile or so away. But how? How did he end up there? There's still lots of confusion and questions about the monument and how Chance ended up there. And Marcy shares that concern.
I'm still having the same concerns as many other people, I've had along, the way. The location raises legitimate questions, obviously, and just from like all the public information and the investigation, and from what we've added up over the years, the fact that the remains, were there, doesn't automatically like answer everything. If anything, it opens the door to even more questions, like why that spot, how did he get there, what does the distance say.
So, as we all know now from the reports and the release that came out, that they're ruling this nothing but accidental. So, to play along with that, I wanted to know from Marcy's perspective, based on where Chance was walking and the location of the monument and the direction of the grandparents, would that make sense? Could he have walked that way and fell off the cliff?
No, because it would be really, really hard in the dark. I think the power went out because of the storm, around the town and around the area. And the terrain is really bad. He would have had to swim across like the canal, and he would have had to climb in muddy, and I haven't climbed that mountain, but I'm by the pictures and by what other locals are saying, is that, trying to climb that would have been nearly impossible,
Mhm.
and to go that way. Now, if he would have walked all the way in front of the Scotts Bluff, like where you go into, where like visitors come to go in, he would have been walking way, 4 or 5 mile, I think it's like a 4 or 5 mile hike. I don't think he did that. Why would he have went why would he went to the front of the monument? So
Yeah.
I don't believe that he walked to the back of the monument try to get up the hill. I honestly don't think that he did that. And that's just my intuition. I don't believe that he would have made it up the hill knowing, how bad the storm was. And why would he do that? He was a cowboy. He was a rancher. He's a South Dakota boy at heart. He's not, he knows that it would be a dangerous place to go. And
Yeah.
I just I don't think he went there alone. Yeah, especially if you're going to Torrington, why would you go up the hill from even the front of the monument? You're
Yeah.
not going, you're not climbing the hill to go up the monument. But and
Mhm.
and also it's closed at night. Even when it's open, I believe it's closed. And I think
Mm.
it's, they open from 9 to 6 or something like that during the summer, during that time.
And here I asked Marcy her thoughts, her opinions about the official release that came out with the coroner's report.
I guess my thoughts and feelings when I first found out. Of course, it was hard news. It hit really hard. And then, I mean, even when this kind of outcome is possible, like there's no real way to prepare for it. So my first emotion was heartbreak, and of course for Chance's mom and Don and the family and Ryan, and especially his little boy, and for everyone who has been living, in this uncertainty for 6.5 years. After this, sadness came a wave of like disbelief and honestly, like a lot of questions, because you want to question the why would he do that, and all that kind of stuff. There's grief, and then there's also feeling of responsibility. I feel like I let, and a part of me feels like I let Chance's mom down a little bit, and let, Ryan down. I know, like, they're going to be like, no, 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 but I mean, I personally just felt like I just, that I could have done more or could have helped. And, um, I guess, I tried the best I could to help out with anything I could. The details do matter, and, the truth matters. And it's a mix of sorrow and compassion, and a very real, like, urge to understand what happened. And I think that's a shared feeling with many people that are following the case. Now, when they say, like, the pattern of blunt force trauma most consistent with rapid deceleration event, including but not limited to a fall from height. And I think what their meaning is the rapid deceleration event kind of means like a sudden or extreme stop of the body after moving at a high speed. So that, like, examples for that would be like the falling from a height, being ejected from a vehicle, being thrown from a moving vehicle, a long fall down a slope, or like a high speed collision. I guess, like, a rapid deceleration event does not specify how the person was moving fast, only that the body suddenly stopped with a great force. So that gives me that leaves up, and what they're kind of doing is a blessing in disguise. Is it opens up a little bit more into, it could have been multiple things that he died, from. Those are the examples. What the blunt force, like, trauma would mean, it's kind of like an umbrella term for injuries caused by, like, hitting something hard or being hit by something hard or sudden force against the body. So this would be like includes the injuries from, like, falls, vehicle impacts, being struck, being thrown, but it doesn't tell you exact cause, like only the type of force. Like, those injuries happen when, like, the body rapidly stops after falling or being, like, in motion, and then
Mhm.
fall from a height is one possibility. Um, but the phrase isn't including but not limited to a fall from height, which would mean a fall is an example. Other rapid deceleration causes are still possible. The injuries do not, like, definitely prove a fall. They left the door open for a person being thrown or pushed, a person being hit first, then
Mhm.
falling, a vehicle related incident and event, where the body suddenly decelerates, and that would definitely match my theory this whole time. And this is kind of the first time, Josh, that I'm really actually talking about what I feel personally happened. And I've kept quiet over the last 6.5 years, only to just ask questions and wonder why, and trying to figure this out. I just feel like the experts are just using the words as kind of like the injuries, fit a fall, but could also match other scenarios, basically. I guess with the recent today, with them coming out with this statement, I guess we can all be thankful that he is found. It's Thanksgiving tomorrow, and just be thankful for the people who care and that has been, searching and keeping like people like you, his name out there, and keeping the light on. And there is something to be thankful out of all of this, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. I'm just praying for Dawn and their whole family, and Ryan, he's put so much work into it. And I just I appreciate everybody who, the public, for staying on top of everything. And I guess it's, yeah, just one of those situations where you don't want to see it ending like this. But I guess they did open it up for a little bit of room with the coroner's explanation of what happened, because they didn't rule out other causes. They didn't really prove it was a fall.
I think Marcy is right. This is not the news anybody wanted. No one wants this. And Chance isn't back home on the ranch like Dawn believes he should be right now, where we all would love him to be. But now he is found. And in a way, he's home to all of us who have cared about Chance. And though this is extremely hard right now for so many, especially Chance's family and friends and community, but also for all of us who care about Chance and have kept a light on for him, I hope at least this can be a starting point for healing, a way forward for a family who has been desperate for answers for over 6 years. And it's Thanksgiving tomorrow. I'm releasing this podcast episode late on the eve of Thanksgiving, but tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and we can be thankful that Chance is not lost anymore. He's found. I want to take a moment to thank Marcy for sharing her story and her perspective on this case as we continue to put the pieces together. Thank all of you. Thank each and every one of you for listening. Light Keepers, I can't thank you enough for your support of this mission, because this is more than just a podcast, as I've said right from the beginning, and you are a part of it. So thank you for liking, for sharing, for subscribing to wherever you like to listen to podcasts. It all helps this mission, which is to keep the light on for missing persons. And I'd like to take a moment to ask that if you haven't yet, what really helps, especially on Apple Podcasts, but Spotify as well, it's very helpful to the show. And I'd like to ask you if you could spare a moment to leave a 5-star review about this show. If you've liked this show, if you listened to this show, if you've been tuning in, if you've been helping me keep a light on, leaving a 5-star review for this podcast helps immensely. It helps get the word out to more and more people who can hear these stories, and it helps keep the light on. The last and final episode will be out soon after Thanksgiving. I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. And I want to take a special moment to thank Dawn. I couldn't have and I wouldn't have done this story about Chance without the support and permission from Dawn. And she is someone who I have found to be so loving, and I can't imagine what she's been going through as a mother all these years. So Dawn, thank you so much. I am praying for you and your family, and will continue to do so. Thank you all again for listening, and stay tuned for the final episode. Keeping the Light On, Nebraska's Missing Persons podcast, is created, produced, and edited by me, Josh Kangley. Sources used are hours of interviews conducted by myself and public source material. Thank you for listening. Thank you for helping me keep the light on. Keeping the Light On, Nebraska's Missing Persons Podcast, is a Guiding Lights Network podcast hosted by Josh Kangley.